Right. Hello, everyone. Hello. Happy Friday Eve. Thank you all so much for joining in this afternoon. Good morning, good late morning, good early morning, good afternoon, depending on which coast or region you are in across the world. Happy Thursday, happy Friday Eve. I'm Coach Stella OC, and I am here with another career journey segment. I am so excited for you all to hear the wonderful, wonderful, amazing testimony, not even just a journey, testimony of my dear friend and sister, Dr. Kimberly Everett. Welcome, Dr. Kim.
Thank you. Thank you.
How are you doing today?
I'm pretty good. I'm pretty good. You know, time with you is always at the top of my list. So let's get it.
Yes, yes, yes. So let's dig into it because this journey is so impactful and engaging. I just want to dive right in. So thank you all so much for joining us. We are here with the Dr. Kim Everett, here to share her career journey. So, Dr. Kim, let's get into it with you introducing yourself, your background, and anything you would like the folks to know about you.
Okay. I am Kim Everett. My pronouns are she and her. I am a daughter of the South Side, a product of Chicago Public Schools, Hyde Park Career Academy specifically. I'll see y'all Saturday if you're coming out to the picnic. I am Mary's baby girl. I am a daughter of the Great Migration, with both of my parents having roots in Mississippi, and you hear that in my voice from time to time as well. I am Jaya and Markia's mama, and I also am an educator, an energy healer, and all around trying to help people figure out what they want to do and help them get to it. So that's me in a nutshell. Professionally, my current work is in holistic student support services through a nonprofit organization named 1 Million Degrees, where we are trying to promote economic mobility through community college student success. Also with that program, that program, I get to work with one of the city's colleges. Although the program is in all of the colleges, I am focused primarily at Olive Harvey College, again here on the far south side. Um, One of the joys I get to do with that program is to provide an additional support services for young women of color, and this one hits near and dear to my heart for all of the reasons that I talked about earlier. There's so much that happens at the intersection of race and gender when it comes to education and upward mobility, that part of my job brings me quite a bit of joy. But besides those things, I am also an avid gardener. I am a yogi. I am a trained yoga instructor. I'm not certified just yet, but I am trained. And I am a Reiki master teacher and energy healer. And all of these different parts of me come together to inform how I move through the world on any given day.
Amazing, amazing. So, yes, lots to unpack there. So, let's get into it. Let's first start back to the beginning. Let's start childhood. Miss Chi-Town South Side. Talk to me about what did you want to be when you, well, as a child, when you get that question, what did you want to be when you grow up? What was your vision?
The first thing I remember wanting to be when I grew up is I wanted to be in the Air Force. I don't know why. I wanted to fly planes. And someone told me that they didn't take people with glasses or people with flat feet. And I'm not sure if that's actually true, but that's what I was told. You needed to have 20/20 vision in order to be able to fly a plane. I don't know. And you needed to be able to have, and they thought of flat feet as a deformity that kept you from being able to march at long distances. That was what I was told then. I don't know if it was true or not, but that was the redirection, I'm going to say, that I needed in order to put me on the path toward where I'm supposed to be. And so I thought I wanted to be an elementary school teacher. It was my intention to come back to CPS and teach in the elementary schools to replicate the great teachers that I had and to be the answer to the teachers that were not so great that I had. but I went to Iowa State and majored in elementary education. And by the time I got into my practicum experiences and student teaching and such, I figured out that working with young people was not my ministry. And I would rather work with young adults instead and work with college students. And so that's how I have found my way to where I am now. And that's definitely the best place for me.
Okay, so let's talk about that a little bit. You said went to college, majored in elementary education, through practicum and observation. You discovered that that wasn't your demographic. That age group wasn't your demographic. So help me understand at what point during your undergraduate experience did you decide, young adults, college age students were more of your path, and how did you land your first role in doing so?
hmm I was also a parenting student when I was an undergrad. My oldest daughter, Markia, that we just talked about a second ago, was born the summer after my second year of college. So by the time I went into student teaching, she was 2 years old. And I would come home from my full day in the classroom exhausted and have no energy left to pay attention to her. And I was like, I cannot pour into other people's children all day. Doing it in this way requires more than I am willing to sacrifice and take away from her. And that whole last semester of student teaching and the summer after graduation, where I'm putting together all of the files and the paperwork in order to get my licensure and all of that sort of things. And I was literally ill. I was physically ill because that was not what I wanted to do. So I looked around at my own collegiate experience and the people who were a part of my process. So the hall director out in when I first was at Iowa State in the Towers and then Friley, the folks in the Greek life office who helped me to develop as a leader, as a part of my sorority. I was also a McNair scholar. And so my McNair mentor who helped me figure out not just how to do this research project, but how to be a college student. And all of those people around me who are a part of my process, I said, I want to be that. I want to be the person who helps the college students outside the classroom to figure out all of the other stuff that will help them to be successful in the classroom. And so I looked around and discovered that that was a whole profession, and it was called student affairs. And that was where that made so much sense to me. Things really clicked and locked in. And then all of the sort of synchronicities and seeming serendipities start to link in. My oldest daughter, her godmother, was the hairstylist in town, and I'm in the salon talking to her and one of her clients who happens to be the associate director in the financial aid office. And I have to have an assistantship in order to be in this master's program in student affairs. So that's where my first assistantship started. And so ever since then, it's really been a matter of putting one foot in front of the other and not necessarily having a clear path of where it's going, but everything works out just the way it was supposed to.
I love that. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. The piece about you being a student parent, but also you still were, it sounds like you were still involved. You were involved with Greek life, you were involved in student leadership. And so give me some highlights about, when you discovered that you were going to become a parent, what that process was like, and highlights of that experience.
I remember the day that I learned that I was going to be a parent was also the same day that I performed in my very first step show. I remember going to the doctor's office and getting this confirmation and sharing this news with my partner, and the two of us being excited. But then I also remember going in to get ready for the step show. And as we are preparing and getting ready, I pull everybody in close together and I'm like, look, I got some news, y'all. And in that moment, they all surrounded me and was like, well, I guess we're having a baby. And that's really what it was like ever since then. My children describe themselves as children of the village all the time, and that village mentality happened from day one when I was able to share that news. I also so happened to be that there were a couple of other close friends of mine who were also young parents, and we would get together and support one another. We would trade babysitting services. We would come together and study, and our kids would sit in the corner. We would come together and hang out while our kids were there and playing together. So it wasn't really it didn't stop things the way I thought it would. You know, when I learned that I was a young Black woman who is now a single parent, while my partner was around and involved, we were not married. So I was still a single parent, a teenager, because I was 19 when she was born. And so all of these sort of stereotypes flooded into my brain. I could have dropped out. I could have allowed my mom to take custody while I finished school, but me and my baby girl, we thugged it out together. I often say, we grew up together. And so she and I figured the things out along the way with the help of the village.
I love it. I love it. Thank you for sharing. And yes, it takes a village. Um, as a a mom of youngins myself, I completely am grateful, continuously grateful for the village. Um, so let's talk about your first professional role. How did you land it, and what were some highlights from it?
My first professional role was a residence hall director at Wallace Hall at Iowa State University. I was in the master's program at Iowa State that I just talked about, learning all about student development and how colleges work and everything about that. And one of my instructors was Dr. Virginia Arthur, who was the associate director, I believe was her title at the time, of residence life at Iowa State. And first, I got an assistantship at at the front desk and the residence halls. And so I was there working with the RAs, getting to know the hall directors and the such. And so the following year, while I was still in the program, they suggested that I apply for the hall director position, which is usually a master's preferred. But since I was encouraged, I went ahead and did it. And it was the best decision ever. It was really a great opportunity to live and work with young people as they are figuring out who they are and where they want to go. For this was again living on campus. So the first time folks are away from their families, away from their parents. We are in a college town in Iowa, which is very representative of the demographics of that state. And so particularly for young people of color, trying to figure out how to navigate this predominantly white institution was my first job, and doing it where they lived. And I loved everything about it. Well, I didn't love the fire alarms at 3 a.m. or hall director duty calls, but other than that, I loved everything about it.
Can you talk to me about some of the transferable skills that you've gained that you still use to this day?
Mm-hmm. The residence halls gave me a variety of opportunities. It was its own community, and it had everything that was necessary in the community. There was government, there were leadership opportunities, there were spaces for me to be able to learn and grow. And I got a chance to do a whole lot of different things. One of the things that I got to do was teach a class for I'm mixing up jobs now. I got a chance to teach in the RA class. That was actually, this is another job later, but this is a extended residence hall experience that's where I was introduced to the classroom. And I had the opportunity to help build the syllabus, help build lessons, and to be able to really create an experience that students could use practically. We wanted to make sure that RAs knew a lot of different things about college students, because again, we have whole degrees in it. And so we want to give them a taste of that. And so being able to give them a taste of that and to get in the classroom, because remember, I wanted to teach before, just not children. So teaching college students was one of the first things that I got to, that was the first exposures to that as a hall director. Um, Another one of the things that I got as a hall director was around conflict management and conflict resolution. Because again, you're working with people where they live. And these are people who have poured into this space from all over the globe. And conflict is inevitable when humans come about. So really being able to mediate the conflict, help all parties be able to be heard and find a workable solution for everyone so that we could continue to live in a community. Um, let's see, other transferable skills. That was my first taste of people management. I had a staff of RAs that I was supervising and directing their work. And again, they too are students in this process. So helping them to learn how to balance life and responsibility, as I am also learning how to balance life and responsibility, are some of the big things that I took away from that. I still teach. Now I teach. I forgot to talk about that part earlier. I teach in the master's program at Northwestern for folks who are going into student affairs for the very same reason. I want them to be able to know what they're getting themselves into and help them to really understand how all of these things come together, and that your college experience is not the college experience, just one of many possible experiences. And so helping to expose folks to all of those different ideas has started there.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I think one thing with as a former Res Life professional, one of the things is that, that we get that folks fail to understand about this role is how much transferable skills and experiences, conflict resolution, communication, programming, supervision, that this role entails. So thank you for highlighting some of those. So let's fast forward into your career. The res life people is like res lifers for life. And so that clearly wasn't your journey. So talk to me about how you transitioned out of res life and what was the next chapter, professional chapter for you.
When I left Iowa State, when I left the hall director role at Iowa State, I went to the University of West Georgia. My husband at the time and my daughter and I moved to Atlanta, where I became an assistant director managing residence hall directors. So really just increasing my sphere of influence from doing the similar things, but at a different level. And I enjoyed that. I enjoyed that quite a bit. But one of the things with residence life for me is it's a routine. There are clear cycles, and it kind of starts to feel to me like Groundhog's Day in some ways. And for some folks, that level of routine is fantastic. But I was feeling like I was getting further in age from the students, which made the students become much more annoying than they had been at one point. And so I didn't want to live with them anymore. I did not want to work with them where they lived. I needed someone else to be ready and responsible for that part. But I came back to Iowa State after I was at the University of West Georgia for a little while, in part because I wanted to go into a doctoral program, but it was also because I wanted to touch on a different aspect of the college experience. And when I came back, that's when I started working in access programs around particular identity populations. And I was working with engineering students of color. And that is also that hitting that sweet spot of working at the intersection of social identity and the college experience. That's where I started to fall in love with those processes and trying to figure out what are the needs that are unique for students of color who are studying engineering, and connecting with my colleagues across campus with the other programs and figuring out what we have in common, what are the shared needs and what are the divergent needs of these various populations. And that work is really what fed me. I can remember specifically there was one young man coming from Brooklyn, and I talked to his mom on the phone a few times. And when she came to bring him for orientation, she was in tears because she was confident that there was someone there looking after her son, that she had a trusted person to hand him off to. And I took that as a high honor to be that trusted person. And so I think often of Brandon and his mom and how that is the goal that I always have. I always want to know that there's somebody here looking out for your kid as you're sending them across the world into this unknown space and place.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I in continuing the working with first gen students and the anxious parents of, just wanting to find someone to hand their student off to, thank you, one, for answering the call to be in those roles, because those roles aren't easy. And in today's climate, our folks are trying to get rid of it. But it's necessary, it's purposeful, desperately needed, not only from the parents but from the students as well. So I'm
And
so
now as the parent on the other side of that, my girls are 28 and 20, and my 20-year-old is a rising junior in college this year. And so when we went to orientation for her 2 years ago, it was quite the experience being on the other side of that. And all of my years of preparation really did not ready me for that experience. I was still there trying to make sure that there was someone that I was going to be handing her off to, making sure that she was going to be okay. And she's doing great.
awesome. Yes, she is. Yes, she is. So Dr. Kim, let's move on and talk through. So you talked through your experience in Res Life and how you left Res Life, but you were still in within different colleges working through access programs on college campuses. It's Talk to me through, because at some point you left the college setting, you left campus, being on campus, doing the work on campus. Talk to me about that transition. What made you make that decision to leave higher ed institutions, but still work within access program? Can you explain that journey? Walk us through that process.
I can. Um, Higher education in this country dates back to the 1600s. And so think about what was going on in the world. What were people like us doing at that time? Higher education was not made with us in mind. But similar to, I've used this analogy in the past, like a house that did not have indoor plumbing. Sure, it can be retrofit and plumbing can be added to it, but it was never intended to be a seamless part of the foundation of the house from its beginning. And I started to feel less hopeful, if I'm honest with you, about my ability to make any sort of major impact in that space. That was a period where burnout started to set in, and I was just starting to feel like I was more band-aid than solution. And I wasn't certain if that was because of me and my skill sets, or if it was because of the institution and the ways that institution. And so when I got to that place of serious questioning and really wondering, as I was the one to give the students what they needed, when there were so many clear and present needs, that it was sort of I need to step aside while this gets figured out, because the work to be done is way too important to go undone. And I am no longer willing to continue to sacrifice my own well-being and health in order to try and make that happen. But the way I was trained in my education and the field of student affairs, as I understood it, seemed very specific. Like there are a few tracks you can go on, but they are all pretty similar, with the goal of hoping to be a VPSA or something like that one day. And I didn't really see another way for me to make impact in the ways that I wanted to, because I had gone up in this access programs track. And so there came a point where there was an opportunity to move to education adjacent. So I moved into a nonprofit that focused on policy and technical support for system-wide change, which is like, okay, this is where I want to be. This is where I am able to make the impact that is necessary, working with legislators to institutionalize policies so that we can have better supports for historically marginalized students, or working directly with colleges as they figure out the big picture of what it means to provide support services and access to marginalized students. And as important work as that is, that was also not the role for me. And I came to learn that relatively quickly, but I didn't know what was. I didn't know what would be for me. While I was at my last institutional role, I started to do a little bit of training and consulting and starting to think about the ways that the work that I'm doing with these students can be translated into other spaces and places. And that is when there was the boom of corporate DEI in response to all things 2020. And I was able to build up going into the summer of 2020, but come the summer of 2020, when all of the companies were being called to account, we're not going to talk about how 5 years later, that's all a whole nother story. That's not the part of the conversation we're on right now. Part of the conversation we're on right now is how I got there. But there were these opportunities where companies were wanting to learn more about how they could change their systems and structures to better suit some of their employees whose voices had not been centered in the conversations before then. And so the way I talk about it is I follow my students into the workplace. The institutions of higher education was no longer feeling effective where I was able to lend my time and talents. And so I follow my students into the workplace. And I worked with companies who demonstrated a genuine desire to understand why their cultures may not be as hospitable for some of the members of their community. And we're looking for real solutions as to how they could change that. And that is where I was able to take my talents and all of the things that I'd learned about the ways that our actions, both intentional and unintentional, can impact the student experience and take it into how it then can impact the employee experience.
I love it. I love how you found alignment with that. And you did all the work for over a decade in helping these students on college campuses. And then with all things 2020, you saw an opportunity to catch leadership of these corporations, of these businesses up with their not only new associates, but
Exactly.
mid-level folks and helping them understand where they're coming from. I love that you, one, answered that call. I want to back up for a second. You talked about two things, and that I think this will lead into your work with as a Reiki master. You talked about in undergrad how your body told you you weren't in the right role as an elementary teacher. And then in your last role within the institution, you mentioned you got physically ill and you were no longer able to do the work. Talk to me about how you paid attention to your body, and did that lead you into the healing space and into Reiki?
I didn't know it at the time, but absolutely that's what took me there. What one of the self-care tips that folks always hear about is therapy. Go to therapy. So I had my therapist, and things she and I would talk about a number of different things. And one of the recommendations she gave to me was to consider some sort of a pharmaceutical intervention for the anxiety and depression that I was starting to experience. And before we went to, we went to the physician, but before we went into a pharmaceutical, I also visited a naturopath. And she asked me questions about the symptoms that I was feeling, from the weight gain to the stomach irritability to hair loss and being borderline diabetic and all of these different challenges that were coming up in my body. And when she asked me about the circumstances of my life, and I was talking about the high stress that was going on at work and all of those sorts of things, and the timeline for both these symptoms and these circumstances had never dawned on me before. And she helped me to see the physical impacts that stress was having on my body. And in that time, I also started to do yoga. And I had a Reiki practitioner that I would visit to help me to balance out my energy. I didn't really understand what all of this energy work stuff was, but as I told you, I believe in the synchronicities that come my way, and things show up when I need it and where it's supposed to happen. So I ran into my first Reiki master. Well, my very first one was one of my students from some time ago, and she introduced and planted the seed, but I only saw her one time. But I later connected with a practitioner that I would go see on a pretty regular basis, and she would tell me all of these various things that just seemed completely far-fetched to me. But all of these things came to pass at a later point. So I had my dream team here. I had my therapist, I had my yoga instructor, and I had my Reiki master. And then I had the sort of auxiliary dream team member of the naturopath to help me see how everything in my life is connected, how my physical health, my mental health, my career path, my parenting journey, how all of these things come together to impact me. And that these things don't just happen to me. I have agency in it all, and I have an ability to take control. And all of these things sort of started for me at an energetic level where I was able to take time and space to think about who I am, what matters, and how I want to move. And so, as I started to learn about the way all of these things connect, I wanted to be a bit more independent in my healing process. And so that's where I started to take the deep dives into where I can go see someone else and where I can be in charge of my own healing. So I started with Reiki. I wanted to be able to give myself Reiki and provide this for my friends and family to help anybody else who is experiencing any sort of imbalance to really just pull it together and take a few moments to think about themselves and pour into themselves. And so I needed to be able to do that on my own as well. So that's where it kicked off at.
I love it. I love it. You know, you said earlier today that I was going to learn some new things about you. And I'm like, no, I'm not. And I was front and center for this experience, but I never really understood, saw how it all connected. And so, thank you for sharing that. Definitely learned a different, additional perspectives of how everything came together. Um, and how you make the decision. You had your dream team, your dream healing team, but then you're like, let me take charge and let me get more independent when it comes to my healing. And so, taking the courses, I know I refer to you as the forever student.
Yes.
Because you went and got certified and you did all the courses and hours and graduated from um, to become the Reiki master. So thank you for sharing that. Um, Time is flying as I knew it would.
I know, I'm trying to be complete and concise. Yes.
Right, right. And no, I appreciate it. I appreciate you. So let's talk about present day. So talk to me about your role. Talk to me about the role with TFI Flourish, and how Reiki Master, yoga enthusiasts, how does this all um, come together for work life balance? Or if you call it something different, would love to hear that.
Let's see. We just wrapped up a 4-week series for the TFI Flourish Scholars that was all about understanding your own inner voice, versus the influence of those around you. And to be able to sit and take aligned action in your own life that centers your voice while also taking into account that you are a member of a community. Um, and I say that everything that I say to these students are the things that I need to hear. I need to continue to be reminded about what is my voice and what are the things that I have been told a leader should be. And continuing to sift out where I am being guided and where I am being led to in taking action. So at this point, professionally, particularly with TFI Flourish, I am walking my talk. I am getting constant reinforcement on what it means to be a woman of color in a world with multiple responsibilities. And as I show up as who I am, I help them see that it's okay for them to show up as who they are as well. And that is an integration of everything that I have ever thought about and or studied. The program is honestly quite closely based on the concept of self-authorship by Marsha Baxter Magolda that I teach in my class. But in order for me to be able to sit at the crossroads and discern my own voice from the voice of others, I have to be in tune with myself, which means that I have to have a practice of regular spiritual hygiene that includes my regular meditation, regular Reiki, and the such. It also requires me to be the scholar practitioner and continue to stay abreast of new trends, emerging data, and the such. I talk about this role that I'm in now as being like a tournament moment. If you remember the original Karate Kid, when Daniel-san was doing all of these seemingly random exercises, but at the time that it was necessary, it all came together and everything made sense. And he was able to wax on, wax off without thinking about it because he knew exactly what to do. He was able to brush up and down with the paintbrush on the fence because he knew exactly when to deploy that. And in that movie, you also see the healing moment. It wasn't easy. He still had injuries, he still had adversaries in the process, but he had Mr. Miyagi there to go ahead and put hands on him to help him heal so that he could continue to endure. And so my life right now feels a lot like that. All of these random classes seemingly are coming together in a way that helps me to be able to continue on that path. That makes sense
It makes complete sense. It's not linear. Your
at
journey
all.
has not been linear. Your journey has not made sense to some mentors or even outside observers. But that's the and that's why I love full circle moments, because in the end, at the end of this chapter, because your journey still continues, right? It all comes together. It all makes sense, and
And
I
that's
love
the
it.
part. That's the part is that I have learned more than anything. Not necessarily like do this, then do that, then do this, but really I have learned how to assess, game plan, move, and reassess because it's constantly changing. It's constantly evolving. I'm not trying to get to a particular place, but I want to have a process of reflection and refinement. And that is what is most important to me as I try to move through life. Because, like you said, the journey's not over. There's going to be more, and it may look different than what anything I've ever experienced before. But again, if I am in tune with myself, if I know who I am, if I know where my values are, if I understand the sound of my own voice, then I can be able to move in the way that is best for me. Oh, okay. Are we stuck? Are you here?
I'm here. I'm here.
Okay.
I don't know. Can you hear me?
I can. We just had a little glitch.
Yes, the joys of going live.
And Mercury is in her microbraids.
I went
So
off camera
technology
again.
is one of those things that's impacted.
Oh my goodness. Yes. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Kim. I'm going to see that as a signal that because we are at time, but I appreciate you sharing your journey, sharing your perspective. So many gems to be learned, to take in, and reflect on. So I really hope you all got a lot out of this. Um, I love to end our sessions with some spitfire questions, top of mind thinking. So, like with all other guests, the you all you don't have the questions in advance. So, you ready? Just have a couple. They're fun,
Let's go.
lighthearted, meant to be lighthearted, but we'll go wherever it takes us. You ready?
Let's go.
You ready?
Yes.
All right,
Can you
let's
hear
get
me?
it. All right. So, first question. If you didn't have to work, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, seems like we're on a delay.
Yes, we are.
Hmm. Kim, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me?
Okay, so I can. There is a slight delay, but we'll see if it works out. If you didn't have to work, how would you spend your 50 hours? What would you spend those 50 hours a week doing?
I was probably that's a good question. I would volunteer for the things, the parts of my job that I like. So I would continue to mentor. I would continue to provide energy healing services to anybody who wanted it. And I would just love to sit around and talk to people about how did you figure out who you wanted to be, and are you on track to be the person that you wanted to be. I would just really sit up and have those conversations all the time.
Mm. What is a book that you have found most impactful in your
That
journey?
one's easy. The Alchemist. That's my all-time favorite book. Thank you, Megan Mitchell, for introducing me to that book all those years ago. And I have read it at least 10 times and gotten 10 different life lessons out of it.
Agree. Agree. Alchemist, amazing book.
With a
Um,
close second of the Four Agreements.
oh, another guest said the four agreements. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. We got a theme here. I hope y'all paying attention out there. Okay. What was your last touch grass moment?
Well, it's not grass, but I touch green stuff every day. I have a garden in my backyard, and yesterday we went out and picked cucumbers and tomatoes from the garden.
Yes. How is the tomato plants coming along? Is it still?
They are still, I have supported them some, but they are still a little bit unruly, and that's okay. We're gonna let them do what they do.
Yes. Let it do what they do. Yes. All right, now I know you're Shy Town, so summertime shy is here, full effect. It's winding down, unfortunately. What is your top two summertime shy moments or events or things that you like to do in the summertime in the Chicago?
I like to sit and look at the water. I'm not a beach girl. I don't want to get in the sand or any of that, but I love to sit on the rocks at the lakefront and look out at the water and just look at the vastness of it and how it just seems to go on forever. Even though it looks like it's stopping, but you know it goes much further than what you can see.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Love Lake Michigan. Shout out to Lake Michigan. All right. Well, that is it, y'all. That is our time together today. Tune in again next Thursday for another segment of our career journeys that we got going on here at Coach Stella. Be sure to follow me on my IG channel, Coach Stella OC. Please pass these interviews on to the folks that you feel may need it, folks who are in between careers, just starting out in their careers. All my parents out there, high schoolers, early college students, or all college students, I should say, please tune in. There is no one way to career success. All these journeys, they all talk about different chapters and different segments and alignment and realignment. And so these are everyday folks, everyday journeys. Dr. Kim, thank you so much for coming on and telling your journey. I really, really, really appreciate it. Are there any last minute nuggets or gems or words that you would like to give your viewers?
Yeah. Become well acquainted with the sound of your inner voice so that you know it's you that is spurring you to action. You so that you know why you're moving in the ways that you're moving and taking action that is aligned with your own inner voice.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Kim. See you all next week. Bye bye.